The early bird gets the worm, but will Chris Christie and Hillary Clinton keep the lead in the very early running to the 2016 presidential race? That's today's topic for our agenda panel. Joining me now, founder and editor of Political Wire, Tegan Goddard, Huffington Post politics reporter Sabrina Siddiqui, and MSNBC contributor and producer for The Rachel Maddow Show, Steve Bannon. Gang, it is great to have you all here. Obviously, there's a long way to go before we get to 2016, but one of the big topics being Chris Christie. And Steve, you wrote an article asking whatever happened to Chris Christie's brand as a tough, no-nonsense politician who's afraid of anything, who's not afraid of anything, and he vetoed the ban, as we've been talking about, on the 50 caliber sniper rifles, easy enough for me to say, conditionally vetoed background checks, kind of punted on the medical marijuana for sick kids, and yesterday he approved a law banning gay conversion therapy for teens. Gay marriage, though, is still illegal in New Jersey. So what's going on here, Steve? Not so long ago, he was calling conservatives the crazies, and now everyone's kind of questioning where he's fallen.
I think that's a very sound question at this point. We really don't know. Chris Christie cultivated a brand as being a very tough guy, a no-nonsense guy, and yet we saw just recently he scheduled the Senate special election for mid-October on a Wednesday because he was afraid to be on the ballot with Cory Booker. He asked for the 50 caliber ban, and then the legislature agreed, and then he vetoed it. I think that Chris Christie is trying to thread a needle very carefully because he wants to run for president, but the Republican base doesn't like him. He's trying to mend fences with the Republican establishment, and all this has kind of left Chris Christie in a very strange place where no one really knows what to make of him right now.
All right, so we have this new article in the National Review reporting Christie's inner circle has quietly labored behind the scenes to woo the party's skeptical power brokers, a broader tacit push for the political rehabilitation. Tegan, let me ask you, what's the impact of this GOP rehab for Christie on the rest of the party's frontrunners? And let's remind everybody, the biggest attraction for people about Chris Christie is the fact that he's a straight shooter, no-nonsense kind of guy who can be lovable because of that.
Kind of forming where you've got a first tier which includes Senator Rand Paul, you've got Chris Christie, and you've got Senator Ted Cruz from Texas, each of them representing a very different part of the Republican Party. Then you've got a second tier with a bunch of people where, who knows, it's very early, but a lot of those people may pop in. But each of those candidates has a very different base that they're going after. That National Review article is really insightful because it says ever since Hurricane Sandy swept through and Chris Christie embraced President Obama in the aftermath of that disaster, he has been doing everything he can to mend fences with establishment Republicans. That is his ticket to the Republican nomination. If he can mend fences with establishment Republicans, he has a chance. But as Steve was talking about, this zigzagging back and forth on these issues is causing him a little bit of difficulty. Today, there's a very big event to watch, which is the endorsement, Christie's endorsement of Steve Lonegan in the U.S. Senate race. It'll be very interesting to watch how strongly he endorses them, because Lonegan's got very little chance to win this race. Cory Booker is way ahead in nearly every poll, and it'll be very interesting to see how strongly Christie comes out in support of Lonegan.
All right, so we talk about Chris Christie, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, three people, very different people, but Sabrina, what about Marco Rubio? It seems like he's fallen off the radar completely.
I do think he's fallen off the radar, and perhaps he's been a little more quiet after immigration reform passed the Senate. He perhaps miscalculated how much support he would get from being part of the bipartisan group of senators who backed that bill and pushed it through the Senate. He also garnered a bit of criticism because since the bill actually passed the Senate, he hasn't really helped sell it to conservatives or really been a part of conversations with the House and House Republicans on how they're going to move forward. So I think the effort's been seen as somewhat disingenuous in terms of his support for comprehensive immigration reform and a pathway to citizenship in particular. He's certainly trying to win favor with conservatives, and I think he's trying to grasp at straws a little bit too. He attached himself to the effort to defund Obamacare or allow a government shutdown. Of course, that's questionable if you're trying to appeal in a general election, you know, whether or not you are willing to allow economic calamity is going to come back perhaps to hurt you. And at the same time, with respect to conservatives, it's actually Senator Ted Cruz who's gotten a lot of attention for the defund Obamacare effort. So while Rubio has signed on to it, he hasn't even gotten the attention in conservative circles for being a part of it.
Meanwhile, some people would say that the platform or the strength that these Republican candidates have is the reason why Hillary Clinton may be vocal early on. We know she spoke out on voting rights recently while getting an award on the West Coast. She's got another big speech coming up this month. Steve, is that really why, or is it we're more interested in figuring out if she's going to run? Because we haven't gotten the high sign from her camp. She's a distinguished private citizen right now, and that's it.
I think that's right. I think it's quite possible that she gave this very spirited, very powerful speech about voting rights because she supports voting rights. I know that for those of us in media, we want to look for the larger implications for 2016, but it's also equally possible that she just has a great passion and a great interest on these issues. But I think, given the circumstances, it's only natural to think that she's also positioning herself, letting Democrats know what the key issues are, what she stands for, what are the kind of issues that will likely be an important part of the 2016 campaign.
And when we talk about that, and Tegan, I know you've been following the Joe Biden not going into the night quietly, so to speak, and there might be, certainly interest from him about whether or not he's going to make a go for 2016. Does that all depend on what Hillary Clinton wants to do?
Well, it's not so clear. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal just yesterday which suggested that Biden's close advisors have determined that he could win in a face-off with Hillary Clinton in a Democratic primary. So, perhaps there's just some, behind-the-scenes jockeying going on. But I think what it points to, and the reason all of this is starting so early, is in the autopsies of the Mitt Romney campaign, people felt that he had a decided disadvantage against President Obama because he did not have enough time to get a campaign apparatus up and running. Republicans are doing that, and I think on the same side you're seeing Democrats starting to do that. I think to run what is in excess of $1 billion operation to run for president, you have to start early, and that's what they're doing right now.
It's amazing when you think about the cash going into this. Steve Bannon, Sabrina Siddiqui, and Tegan Goddard. Great to have all three of you. Thank you.